Those of you familiar with the Christian calendar will know that today is Ash Wednesday. Most people are more familiar with yesterday, which was Mardi Gras, or Fat Tuesday, or Shrove Tuesday, or, well, Pancake Tuesday. Pancakes. Now, I'm a secular guy. I don't really believe in supernatural God or anything like that, but I am a church-going atheist. I go to a Christian church. They know I'm an atheist. They know I don't believe in God, but I do subscribe to the narrative of the Christian calendar. But I'm not talking about, like, the mainstream Christian church that supports the American empire, that supports empire thinking. I'm more thinking about the original idea of Jesus, the radically anti-authoritarian, communalistic, radically accepting, radically loving kind of guy. I'm on board with that kind of thing, and I'm on board with the kind of thing that implies. Part of the reason why I go to a church rather than just simply having those ideals is that I like the ritual. Ritual I find to be very important in maintaining and forming a worldview that's coherent. I don't do it because I have to, like I'm feeling compelled or anything like that. I do it more so because it invokes in me a sensation of the world that I want to live in. So when it comes to Ash Wednesday represents the beginning of the season of Lent in the Christian calendar. So this is the period that leads up to the season of Easter, in which Jesus is wandering through a desert. Not exactly lost, but he's looking to find himself. He's gone off on a vision quest, and he's being tempted by all sorts of trials, and he's having a rough go of things. And so in marking the occasion of Lent, what Christians usually do is they give up something that they value, something that they depend on sometimes, in order to remind themselves what that reliance is like, in order to draw attention to how dependent one is on that thing that you're giving up. Now, of course, I'm not doing this for any sort of deity. I'm not doing it because I feel like I'm trying to please a god or anything like that, but I'm doing it in order to remind myself of exactly how dependent I am on the things that I'm giving up. So in the past, I've given up things like, well, weed. I used to have a pretty substantial dependency on cannabis, and so I gave that up for a while, and, well, it was hard. It was really quite difficult to give that up when it was one of the things that I did on a fairly regular basis, if not daily. On other occasions, I've given up alcohol, and that too is quite difficult, and for the reason that most social occasions end up involving alcohol in some way. So I always felt just kind of like weird in those social situations, or for that matter, it's kind of really good social lubricant, and I'm an awkward guy. I get social anxiety pretty easily, so it facilitates the ability to be social. So for that Lenten season, I really recognized just how difficult, how challenging it was, and how much I relied on the anesthetic qualities of the alcohol to get me through a social event. One other year, I gave up meat for Lent. I just decided, what it would be like if I was vegetarian for Lent. And at the end of Lent, well, I realized that it didn't really miss meat at all, so I just kind of stuck with it. And that was, I guess almost 10 years ago now. So yeah, that's a thing that happens. Sometimes you realize just how unimportant the thing that you thought you were dependent on was as well. This year, though, I am giving up scrolling. I spend an awful lot of time scrolling on a daily basis. I'll perfectly admit that. I'm quite addicted to the internet, have been for a very long time. Since as long as there's been an internet that I've had access to, I've been on it for basically most of my day. It's really kind of a problem. I get very fixated on it. And there's obviously good reason for that. It's kind of designed, especially the contemporary internet, to be fixating and addictive and enticing. And I've tried to give it up before. Like, I've tried to just specifically give up Facebook or specifically give up Reddit or any number of other things. But each time I did that, I found that I just found something else. I went from Facebook to like Twitter, or from Twitter to something else, and there was always something else to scroll on, something else to just like passively go through. Now, what's really wrong about this? Because like there's nothing inherently wrong with being on the internet a lot. What I'm having a problem with is just like not diving into any content specifically, but just like sampling shallow content. and just constantly switching from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, scrolling endlessly without any actual input taking place. It occupies an embarrassing amount of my time, and I don't want to be dependent on this anymore. I want to be at least able to manage that, at least able to cope with it. In a way, the internet, particularly the contemporary internet, once again, is the worst thing for a guy like me to possibly exist. I'm a very distractible kind of guy. I've got the symptoms of ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, so a psychiatrist could label me as such, and yeah, I do take the drugs that are prescribed for such a thing. I take a long-acting amphetamine called Vyvanse, and it kind of helps. It allows me to focus on certain things, but a lot of the time it just ends up with me falling down a rabbit hole into something else, where sometimes I'll intend to like get the house cleaned and end up spending 8 hours making a Snapchat filter of my cat's face. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, so bad has this problem become that I get paralyzed sometimes. I'm not able to get anything done. I'll stare at an essay I'm trying to write for literally hours through a day, and possibly even the whole day, and just not get anything written. And just go switching back and forth between different tabs in my browser, pick up my phone idly, put it back down again, and there's really no point in any of it. I wasn't actually looking for anything, and there was nothing there to see in the first place, so why am I doing it? But yet that compulsion is still there. Part of the reason for this is in the design of these systems. They exploit certain vulnerabilities in the human psychology that really I'm very vulnerable to, particularly the intermittent reward pathway. Human beings, if we get a reward for every time we do a thing, well, we kind of lose interest in it. If we never get a reward for doing something, well, obviously we're not going to keep doing that thing because, well, we know we're not going to get rewarded for it. But if we sometimes get a reward, if there's an intermittent reward for a thing, say like you pull the arm of a slot machine and every once in a while you win, well, that's very fixating. It's very tantalizing. You get that little dopamine hit in your brain, and I don't want to reduce it down to chemicals, but it feels really good. You get this rush of endorphins, this rush of just good feelings, and the dopamine hits, and away you go, and you feel good for couple of seconds, and then you need to do it again and again and again and again and again. And this is the way that addiction happens. It's not necessarily always chemically addiction. It's not always like to a drug that one can get addicted. One can get habituated to just an action. If that action causes your brain to ding, hit that little dopamine button, well, it's going to get habituating. And the internet, for me, is very much like that. And the problem is that each time that button gets hit, each time you get that little ding of dopamine, it gets desensitized. And so the same stimulation gets a little less effective and a little less effective, and eventually it starts getting numb. It stops really having that pleasing effect anymore, and it just ends up being this compulsion. And to the extent where one can end up not feeling good no matter what one does. And for that matter, one can feel not good about anything anymore at all. One's senses can even be dulled, like quite literally in this way, where one's hearing, one's sight, one's smell can be numbed out by overstimulation. You may have walked onto an elevator or something like that when someone before you had been wearing a lot of perfume, and you might be like gagging and coughing and choking on it, and like, how are they not gagging and choking and coughing on it when it's like on them? But it's because they've worn perfume so much and for so long that their nose can't even sense it anymore. They don't even know that it's there. They don't know how strongly they smell. And it's the same kind of thing with the internet here, where I don't really even notice how much time I spend staring at the thing. I installed an app on my phone that tells me how many times I unlock it, how many times I look at my notifications, how much time I spend staring at the Facebook app or whatever else, and it's disturbing. It's really honestly disturbing. And I need to stop that because I'm wasting a great deal of my good hours in a day. In one of my recent videos, I talked about the way that social control is now offloaded to algorithmic control. And you can see that right about here. But effectively what's going on here is that the algorithm is habituating not only the way that I behave, not only the way that I'm interacting with the world and interacting with my senses, but also the way that I'm seeing the world. Because I'm seeing the world through a filter, quite literally a filter, not just like a silly cat filter, but through a window that is non-neutral. It's altering my perceptions of the world in such a way as I see a reality that is, well, shallow. It's also so distracting that I can't think clearly and deeply enough to be able to accomplish the things that I want to be able to do. I haven't really been able to read deeply for any length of time for years now. And as a semi-flunked out graduate student, that's kind of an impediment. Even worse that I can't write very well at the moment. I used to be writing constantly, but lately I can barely string a couple of sentences together to write a description for these videos. I'm able to talk clearly, at least I think I can, but even that's kind of difficult at times. It takes me quite a long time to even just get down to work on this because I'm just so busy switching from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. And if it's having this much effect on me, and it's designed in this way, how much effect is it having on the rest of the world? What's it doing to us on a macro scale? Our entire culture is being affected by this. And what's worse, like, what about kids? They don't even recognize that this is going on, and they've grown up in it. They were kind of raised by these things. There's a lot of parents, and no judgment because, I understand. There's a lot of parents that just hand their kids a phone or a device of some sort and say, hey, go nuts. And that's kind of scary because it's habituating the developing mind to this same level of pathological, disorganized thinking that I'm suffering as a grown adult with critical thinking skills that's actively aware of what this is doing to me. We need to solve this. So yeah, I'm officially giving notice. I'm going to try and kick the algorithm out of my brain. So if you know me on any social media things, I won't be looking at news feeds for the next little while. At least not till Easter. I will still be on various messengers and whatnot, and I'll check in every day or so on things, every couple of days at the very most, just to make sure I haven't missed anything important. But if you need to reach me, contact me directly. Either way, though, I would encourage you, whether you're a follower of Lent or not or whatever, like, give it a shot, give it a try. Take a little break and just see how you feel. You don't have to stick with it necessarily, but it might at least bring your attention to how much it's affecting you, how much it's affecting the world around you. Anyway, I make these videos daily, so if you enjoy my content, please like the video and subscribe to it. All those algorithmic things, you gotta feed the algorithm. And, well, thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.